Okay, the last video I'm going to make is on scatter frequency charts, and histograms. So scatter plots are basically what we've been working with all term up to this point where you're plotting data on a graph. Okay. There is a reading on scatter plots on WAMAP, so I suggest looking at that. But what we're going to look at with scatter plots is if there's a correlation or not. Okay, so when we're looking for correlations, what it means is if we're looking at a graph, so this we call scatter plots, and when we're looking at a graph, comparing two things, if we're noticing a pattern. Okay, sometimes we're going to notice a pattern that generally is going in the direction from left to right and going downward. We call this a negative correlation. You can look at it as if something's decreasing as the x value as the x moves towards the right, the y is going down. Later we'll associate this with something that's called a negative slope, but for now we'll call that a negative correlation. Okay. We also have a positive correlation. So a positive correlation would be if we see a general trend from the left going up as we go right. So you see how here, if I made a line through here, the line would be going upwards as we go right. So we call this one a positive correlation. Okay. Sometimes we also have no correlation. So if my points are all over the place, then I would just say no correlation. Once you have a correlation, you can either look at it as a linear correlation, meaning that it's kind of following the pathway of a straight line. So this one here would be a linear correlation, or we'll just call it linear correlation. And it is a positive linear correlation because it's going up as we move further right. Okay. We can also have things that are nonlinear correlations, meaning that there's a general trend going on, but it doesn't really make a line. Okay. There's a different pattern. If I erase a few of these, it's not really making a line. It's kind of points that are generally moving in this direction, right? But it's not really based on a line, like if we had all these middle points filled in here. So this one would have a correlation. Again, it's in the positive direction. And this one, what we originally had here when we had just a few dots along the way, kind of two patches of dots, is we call that a nonlinear. Okay, so I'm going to have you do the first page, 1 through 6, here with the scatter plots, looking at those correlations. On the back side, what you're going to do is number 7 and 8. You're going to skip number 9 and 10 because we are not doing that yet. But I'd like you to just create your own scatter plot. So that means you plot those points on there and see what it's looking like. Okay, so we've done quite a bit of graphing there in the last couple days, or I'm sorry, in this term. So you'll notice that there are multiple sets of data here. Go ahead and plot each one in a different color, okay? That way you can keep track of what each one is. So we're looking at those sets of data there. Go ahead and plot these. Maybe plot these in pencil, these ones in pen, pencil, pen, and blue pen maybe. okay, just to see the differences. And we can take any questions on that. I will put up an answer key for that as well. Lastly, I want to talk about frequency charts and histograms. So we're going to look in your orange salmon-colored packet. And we're going to look at pages 10 through 15. 10 through 15. So I'm going to do the first one with you to give you some idea. So the first one says make a frequency table and histogram for the number of rolls of dice. So first, to make a frequency table, what we're going to do is we are going to look at the numbers that appear. So I'll rewrite them here. So all I'm doing is taking number 1 and I'm writing it larger so that you can see it. I'm making sure I didn't miss any numbers because that is a common source of error. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tally how many of each number I have. So I see that my smallest number is 1 and my largest number is 6. So the way the table that they give you breaks it down is numbers 1 to 2. And then they give you the frequency next to it. Okay, so what you're going to do is we're going to count up how many 1s or 2s there are. So here's a 1, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers that are 1s or 2s. So I'm going to go ahead and erase those now. 4 numbers that are 1s or 2s. The next section is 3 to 4. So how many numbers are 3s or 4s? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers that are 3s or 4s. And the last numbers are 5s and 6s. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers that are 5s and 6s. Okay, so this would be my frequency table. Now, frequency tables are different than bar graphs, or different, I should say histograms are different than bar graphs, because we're going to make a histogram now. When we're looking at frequency, you'll notice that we have a whole set of numbers that are continuous, so 1 through 6. We could do 7 to 100, as long as we're looking at a series of numbers that go in order and doesn't skip any. This would not work for if you were graphing something like color, because it's not on a continuum. It does not go, you're not counting up as you go. Okay, and when we're doing histograms, we're looking at how frequently a certain response is done. So in this case, how frequently these numbers are rolled on the dice. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make a histogram. And with a histogram, over on the left-hand side is where we put our frequency. So this is how many times the number occurred. And then on the bottom, we put our different categories. Since this is broken up for you, I'm going to use the same categories it's broken up into. Okay. And the frequency is how many times it occurred. So we have everything from 4 to 7. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? 7 is the number that appeared the most. So then 1 to 2 would go up to the 4. So that's saying that there are 4 1s or 2s that were rolled on the dice. And we don't leave space between our columns on a histogram. Let me write the histogram for you. And this particular histogram we'll label in just a minute. So the 3s to 4s, we go up to the 5. Okay. And then the 5s to 6s go all the way up to the 7s. So we could look at this histogram and tell that 5s and 6s were rolled more frequently than 1s, 2s, 3s, or 4s. So when we do a histogram, we want to make sure we have titles and units. So on the bottom, this is referring to the number rolled by the dice, and then along the y-axis is the frequency. So we could call this histogram of numbers, histogram of frequency numbers were rolled. Okay, we always want a title for our graphs. So I'm going to let you play around with this. I'd like you to work on pages 10 through 15 of your packet, of your salmon colored packet. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you guys have a great weekend.